there's been a few different eras of marketing, right? There was like that Mad Men era. That's when you only did brand. Like creativity was king. There was no such thing as performance marketing. The goal was to get consumers to know who you are and to like you, and then you're more likely to be the one they purchase when they're ready to buy. And then performance marketing, digital marketing came in, and everything was trackable, and you could do direct attribution, and that's like such a great way to build a business. Everyone changed to leaning into that, and you could use Facebook and Google to build $1 billion business, and you put $1 in the slot machine and get $3 back, and it's fantastic. There's nothing wrong with that when it's working, but as like the cookie apocalypse has happened, which people talk about, and privacy changes have come in, and attribution's not as easy, and performance marketing is more competitive. So sometimes you're putting $1 in, you're getting $1.50 back. Sometimes you're putting $1 in, you're getting 85 cents back. And so it's not simple anymore to just lean into that. And so, yeah, the wave that Tracksuit is riding is that people are.
Hey everyone, welcome back. It's season 4, and it's been 4 months since we've been in your ears, on your eyeballs, on screen, in audio, however you watch or consume this podcast. So welcome back. And to anyone that's just joining for the first time, welcome to the We Fucking Love Startups podcast. This is a podcast where we talk to founders, people working in the startup ecosystem, to help share their stories, to help give you the information that you need to make the jump, to be more successful, to learn, to grow. And so we really love doing what we're doing. We speak to amazing guests. Jono and I, it's a treat for us to travel around the country or to shoot in our studio and speak with these amazing, ambitious founders. And so episode 1, we had to start off with a bang. If you have been on the internet over the last couple of weeks, you might have heard about this company, Tracksuit. They just did their series Slay and raised $22 million in New Zealand, or 22 million NZD, to grow this business internationally more. And so we had to get Conor Archbold onto the podcast. Conor is the co-CEO and co-founder of Tracksuit. Phenomenal guy, like really, really lovely guy. Today was the first time I met him in person. And from the moment he walked in, when we just started chatting, I just like, this guy is a lovely, humble guy, and he just spends the next hour just helping to educate on his story, some of his lessons that he's learned, some of the things that have been great, some of the things that haven't been great. And we find out that he's potentially a children's book author in the future. And so look out for the Hedgehog coloring book coming in the future. We're not going to be selling any copies of this, but what we are here to tell you about today is this is a great podcast to listen to, and it wouldn't be here without our sponsor today in Oxygen Advisors. And if you don't know who Oxygen Advisors are, they're in the ecosystem. They've been in the startups for a long time. They're a team of like expert CFOs. They're like finance leaders. They focus on helping like really early stage companies to high growth startups become the companies of tomorrow in New Zealand. And so they'll provide like accurate, reliable monthly reporting. They'll do metric dashboards for you. They'll do strategic advice and support and finance support right through to raising capital. They also fucking love startups, and that's why we fucking love them as a sponsor. So thank you, Oxygen Advisors. And if you need some support and you need some advice, go up and check the team out there below.
Kia ora. Thanks for tuning in to the We Fucking Love Startups podcast, brought to you by Talent Army.
People like you, like, I want to get to like revenue-driven startups versus being so reliant on VC funding for so long. So,
well, going through that Series A process in the States, it was fascinating. What they were saying is like, hey, the one thing Kiwi and Aussie startups are famous for is how capital efficient you are. And in this market, we're all looking down towards New Zealand and Australia for these like special startups that are good at being capital efficient. And so if we can lean into that reputation, we'll do really well globally, I think, which is exciting.
How do we lean into that?
Well, I just keep doing what we're doing. Like, we have the reputation now.
Yeah.
And I guess just like launching startups in this phase and recycling talent more and more. I'd say one thing we've been guilty of in New Zealand is probably like drip feeding startups that don't have product market fit, like small rounds, low valuations, and just little bits of money and they go try to prove one more thing. But actually, if you gave a lot of money and then asked them to take some big bets, and if those work, great. If they don't work, then go try something else.
Yeah.
And that way we recycle the talent. Third time, fourth time, fifth time founders are coming through and building things of real value with their learnings and experience.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think having a bit more capital now that we've had some people that have exited really well in New Zealand that can splash around a little bit more money definitely helps from that earlier stage.
Yeah, and the kind of crossover between Aussie and New Zealand, like VC, and having folks like Blackbird and Airtree sniffing around all the time.
Yeah.
They just have bigger funds, and they've done a good job of getting like superannuation funds into VC, at which just opens up a whole nother level of funding.
Yeah, I like Blackbird saying, see all the seeds in New Zealand. Like that to me is an opportunity for everyone to get out there and get in front of them. And I hope that by this podcast, like I've tried to get a lot of VCs on the podcast just so that we can like pull the kimono back a little bit to understand what happens from like, VCs. And then you'll know yourself, right, being, playing on that side of the field a little bit. A lot of startups are too scared to approach them and have conversations until they think they're ready. And I'm like, oh no, like the minute you can, start talking to them, start the relationship.
Yeah. One of the things that was really useful on Tracksuit's journey was we had a monthly stakeholder update called Tracksuit Tearaways, and it just like, we actually didn't want to raise money early on. We wanted to bootstrap forever, and we started Tearaways anyway just to build a bit of hype, and we added all the VCs that we knew, and as we kept growing and as the milestones kept getting ticked off, we were getting more kind of interest, and just like then when we decided that we wanted to raise money, it was much easier because you'd sort of kept people on that journey the whole time. And so, I always recommend that to founders just starting out. That really helped us.
Yeah. So where was chapter 1 of Tracksuit? Like, where does the story start? I know your background, I know your story, but where did the Tracksuit story start?
So I think Matt and I both had been in MarTech for years.
Yeah.
And worked with lots of brands and social media and
Mishguru.
Yeah, Mishguru.
Mishguru started at the same time as my startup back in the day, same funders, and we met all at a little seed thing. And I remember like those guys thinking, Snapchat's going to be fucking huge.
I mean, look, they weren't wrong. Snapchat was what is huge. It's growing again, and Mishguru did amazing things. And that's where Matt and I met. He joined as like the first SDR. I joined as like sweep the floors generalist.
Yeah.
Early employees, and then he grew into kind of a head of APAC role, and I grew into COO based out of New York. And that was a fantastic journey. Like learned a ton, and that team is amazing. And then when COVID hit, like Mishguru had sort of followed Snapchat's trajectory, and I think they recently had an exit, which is really exciting for the team. So congrats, guys. And
they're back now in New Zealand.
Yeah. Tom's living down in Raglan and living the dream.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so like learned a lot, and Matt and I, we'd seen this like phenomena of consumer brands that grew really quickly but couldn't maintain that growth. And we were fascinated by that. Probably didn't have enough knowledge about old school marketing science to have an opinion about why that happened. But
because you're not a marketer, right?
That's right. Yeah, we're kind of software as a service nerds more than anything else. And we'd seen that happen like to all these amazing brands that we loved. And when we came back to New Zealand, like we were both kind of came back because of COVID, and we were sitting here thinking about what to do. And we kind of partnered with James Herman and the previously unavailable team, and that's like brand marketing knowledge.
Yeah.
And TRA, who are the research agency, and TRA Labs launch like cool market research opportunities. And with our kind of me and Matt's software as a service knowledge, with James and previously unavailable's brand and marketing knowledge, and TRA's market research knowledge, we sort of came up with this problem solution hypothesis of, hey, if these modern consumer companies paid attention to awareness, consideration, brand sentiment, these top of funnel metrics, would they have invested their marketing budget differently, which would have led to long-term sustainable growth. And so that was like a really high level.
How did that conversation happen? I know Simon Pound's been yelling at me for a long time, like, brand is everything, Troy. There should be chief brand officers on every board, and I'm like, yeah. But it was just, I felt like you guys had sort of popped up on the radar and it exploded, right? It's like every startup, right? It's people notice it after the 5 years of hard work that you've been doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it was really quick. Like, we sort of started in April 2021, so we're still young. And those first conversations were probably James being frustrated by there not being brand tracking for growth companies, us connecting the dots between.
Can we just say, like, for people that aren't in marketing or brand,
yeah,
what does brand tracking mean?
Great question. So yeah, we are. Tracksuit is beautiful, radically affordable, always-on brand tracking, which is a ton of buzzwords, as you've just noticed.
Yeah.
And essentially what that means is we do like tens of thousands of consumer interviews and surveys every single week to find out what they think and feel about brands.
Yeah. Yeah. So hypothetically, we fucking love startups. I think we're awesome. I can test that by using Tracksuit to see what people are saying about us online. Is that how, or...
Not scraping online sentiment, more like, hey, these people are all receiving surveys via email and they're answering like, okay, yes, I have purchased flights in the last 3 months. What airline brands am I aware of? What brands do I consider buying? Which do I prefer? Why not? What do I associate with those brands?
Yeah.
Those sorts of questions. And then those are put into a nice dashboard for people to kind of interact with and derive insights from.
Yeah. And this is something like big corporates have been doing for years, right? Like brand awareness, brand tracking.
Yeah, we're not reinventing the wheel on what brand tracking is or what consumer market research is. We essentially do the same things, just in a much more efficient manner, and we capture the same data. But yeah, we just have built it into a dashboard instead of massive slide packs.
Yeah. That's the start of most good SaaS career stories, right? It's like, hey, there was this big thing, big spreadsheet or a big slide deck, and we made it a sexy dashboard and sold it to the mid-market companies that were growing, and yeah.
That's it. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. So that's chapter one. That's a good little meeting to have and talk about, like, meeting of minds coming together.
Yeah, yeah, and like we kind of put together some wireframes of what it might look like. Had some quick discussions about what you might have to price it at to, make it make sense from a margin perspective. And really, then we just went out and, we wrote this list of 100 brands that we thought we could chat to and get warm intros to or that we knew already. And our idea was validation box would sort of be ticked if we could get some of them to commit to be customers. And by the 68th conversation, 11 had signed up.
Nothing.
We hadn't built anything yet. It was like,
and they knew that, obviously, right?
Yeah. It was like, hey, this is the idea. If you sign up, we'll try and build it. We think we can build it in the next couple of months, and your contract will start on the date that it's provided to you.
Yeah.
And then, if we can't build it, we'll just refund you. But they were so excited by the idea that they were willing to kind of jump on board and be an early customer. And the price of that was, less than half of what we charge now. So it was sort of like good validation for us, but they were getting a good deal. And that was the point of like switching into go mode. And we started building, launched our MVP product in about 6 weeks. And, that iterated on that 3 times over the first year. And we hired slowly because we didn't raise any money. We just used that customer revenue to build the team. So
what was the amount of that customer revenue, if I can ask?
It was like we charged sort of like $10K per customer, just like good validation.
And I think you said 16 or something you had, or 11.
Yeah. So it was enough to like hire a developer and pay some small salaries and charge it. But, because there was product market fit, we had great like feedback coming through. We were getting referrals, and we hit kind of 75 customers in the first 9 months.
Were you the salesperson initially? Were you responsible for having those conversations?
I'd say I'm like a 0 to 1 sort of person, and Matt's like a 1 to 1,000. That's why we complement each other really well. So he's better at productizing that sales process. I'm better at maybe kicking it off and getting people bought into the emotional side of the journey.
Yeah. Cool. And then, so if we then, all right, that's how it started, but let's go back a little bit, right, to understand who you are and why you were risky enough to jump into this conversation for the start. Like, you're a lawyer who, like a lot of lawyers, didn't want to be a lawyer.
Yeah, particularly I feel like in New Zealand and Australia, we have a lot of people that train as lawyers and then jump ship into something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of our cohort are now. I was a lawyer at a place called Bell Gully, and a bunch of us have either gone into tech or other kind of consulting or things like that.
Yeah, I think I've had 3 founders, I think, Jono, on this podcast that have been ex-lawyers that are now like tech founders.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's good. I think possibly there's a lot of people like me who maybe weren't born to be a lawyer. Like, my brain is more entrepreneurial, a little more like scattered, and then by doing 3 to 4 years of tough M&A law, you like get the details drilled into you, and it probably made me a more well-rounded person. So instead of just being a harebrained founder, I can actually do a bit of the work now as well.
Yeah, and obviously it helped you at funding rounds, I imagine.
Yeah, like some of that stuff that it seems way out of your toolkit is you can draft your first employee agreements, and you can draft your first contracts, and it's not so scary.
Yeah. And so decided to get out of the legal space, and like, as a lawyer, what do? You're like, next minute, I'm a VC.
Hardly. I mean, I was just
straight to the vest.
I think I'm always just like willing to have a ton of conversations and do the work to set something up. So yeah, what we noticed was that a ton of accelerator programs were launching globally, and like Y Combinator was massive. This is longer ago than I care to admit. But that was a new thing, and I think for someone like me who wanted to get into startups, your options were go to an accelerator program somewhere and learn. You could volunteer on accelerator programs at that time and just kind of be an intern, and I was thinking about that. Or you could go to an MBA somewhere, which was extremely expensive and probably way too difficult for me. And so I was like, accelerator program it is. We didn't have one in Auckland, so worked with the Ice House to launch Lightning Lab here. Lightning Lab had been in Wellington, and 𝐬𝐿 had actually gone through it. And but yeah, we launched it up here, and that was kind of my first entry into the world of startups. And really, I got to learn a lot by being the kind of manager of the program. First of all, I got to create and help like set up that community in Auckland and meet everyone, but also got to go through the program risk-free, I guess. And because I didn't have a startup, I just got to see what happened.
What was it about the startup world that attracted you at that point?
Maybe just the risk and uncertainty and fun, like for a young person, I think you see what's happening in the startup world and you're like, oh, pizza nights, and like this is exciting, and you've got big outcomes with big risk, and that's pretty cool. So that and I think I'm a competitive person, so it's sort of inherently like, can you win at this new exciting thing that's coming up, and can you build something awesome? So that plays a role too.
Yeah, awesome. And then so you then obviously found your way into 𝐬𝐿 and moved to the US, but obviously I think you were born in LA, right?
Yeah, I was born in California, and then lived in a few different places in the States. Moved here when I was 12 and grew up on the shore in Auckland, and then studied in Dunedin, and that's the life story.
Where did you go to school? I was YouTubing last night your name, and I came across a rendition of a song. I can't remember now. Was it you and someone else? Was that you? There's a guy that shares your name at an Auckland school that did this rap that's on YouTube, and I was like, and you can't see the people who it is. It's like shot from too far back, and I was like, please be Conor. Like,
I hope that's not me.
Yeah, well, so YouTube yourself, right? Okay. You'll see it, man. You'll see it. Like, I'm interested because you're thrown into the world of New York, right? Like in New York, Mad Men advertising, like crazy days. Like, how do you soak that up? How do you, as a young Kiwi trying to make it in the world of startups? And 𝐬𝐿 didn't have a lot of money, back then, and so
it was a blast. Like, both Matt and I were pretty early employees, like within the first 10, and showed up in New York with me and the founders and a couple others, and it was just like we were just having a crack. And Mish, Snapchat grew really quickly. Mish grew really quickly alongside of it and had amazing customers like McDonald's and Paramount Pictures. And it was just about leveraging those connections to make more and lean in. So yeah, it was a blast, and I think would have kept growing if Snapchat had kept growing as well. But Snapchat flatlined for 9 quarters, and it was tough to kind of prove the enterprise value of a SaaS product to go alongside it if it's not growing. And so, we pivoted, we did all sorts of stuff. And I think like that's even the before we started the podcast, we talked about hard work and like that comment of you can be in a startup and working extremely hard and not have results necessarily because you're pivoting, you're trying all sorts of stuff, you're trying to get back to product market fit. Or you can be in a startup that has product market fit, and now being in Tracksuit, that's what feels so lucky, is like the timing is right, the market is right, the wave that we're riding of kind of people realizing that brand is just as important as performance marketing. And so there's all these things that mean that the product market fit is there. And yes, you have to work hard and you have to build a good product, but I guess being aware of the wider circumstances that allow for that product market fit is always important, because so many people are working hard on different things. And so I guess there's a good dose of gratitude that Matt and I have because of the situation we find ourselves in.
Yeah, awesome. I love the humility, mate. But I think, you also got to reward yourself, right, for working hard and enjoy the moment and, be appreciative and all the things. But yeah, I think testament to the people that have gone before us, right, that didn't make it. So you're working hard as well. Yeah. Hey, so you mentioned like different types of marketing there, right? So we talk about performance marketing and brand, and so a lot of marketing teams and a lot of startups have spent a lot of money on performance marketing and digital marketing and the likes. And then you've come along saying, hey, your brand is the most important thing. And how are you, talk us through the differences there if you can.
Yeah, so I think before there's been a few different eras of marketing, right? There was like that Mad Men era that you referenced, and that's when you only did brand. Creativity was king. There was no such thing as performance marketing. The goal was to get consumers to know who you are and to like you, and then you're more likely to be the one they purchase when they're ready to buy. And then performance marketing, digital marketing came in, and everything was trackable, and you could do direct attribution, and that's like such a great way to build a business. So everyone changed to leaning into that, and you could use Facebook and Google to build $1 billion business, and you'd put $1 into the slot machine and get $3 back, and it's fantastic. And there's nothing wrong with that when it's working, but as like the cookie apocalypse has happened, which people talk about, and privacy changes have come in, and attribution's not as easy, and performance marketing is more competitive. So sometimes you're putting $1 in, you're getting $1.50 back. Sometimes you're putting $1 in, you're getting 85 cents back. And so it's not as simple anymore to just lean into that. And so, the wave that Tracksuit is riding is that people are kind of balancing and doing full funnel marketing again. So yes, performance marketing is still really important, but also building brand is really important. And so your performance marketing works better if people like your brand and understand what your values are and what you stand for. So essentially everyone became addicted to measurement, and historically there was no way to measure top of funnel apart from big expensive market research reports. Yeah. And so we're allowing companies that don't want to spend tons of money on big market research reports to track the other 50% of their marketing budget. And the easiest way that we talk about, the easiest example to give is, 5% of people are ready to buy a product at any time. 95% aren't ready to buy, but they will buy at some point in the future. So if you think about smartphones, we all have them. We're all going to buy another one at some point. But if you ask a room of people who's going to buy a smartphone in the next 2 weeks, hardly anyone will raise their hands. And what you learn from that is like those people that do raise their hands who want to buy in the next 2 weeks, they need to know price. They need to know how many megapixels the camera is. They need to know how it compares to, the other ones in the market at any given time. The rest of us who aren't ready to buy in the next 2 weeks, we want to know how that product makes us feel. We want to know whether we're going to be healthier because we have that product. We want to know whether it's going to connect us to our friends and family, whether it's going to drive, whether our values are aligned to that company's values. And so those are the two types of marketing. Those ones who are ready to buy right now, you tell them price, you tell them performance. The ones who aren't ready to buy, you emotionally connect with them. And then when they are ready to buy, they hover over your brand first.
Yeah. How do you do that at Tracksuit?
How do we build brand?
Yeah, how do you market your own brand?
Yeah, we've definitely focused on top of funnel and building brand, from an employment perspective. It's really important as well as we're marketing to marketers who sort of respect that showing up in that way. So we definitely show up almost more like a consumer company than a B2B company. It's part of the reason why we called it Tracksuit. Yeah. It's more fun. It's more interesting. We can post photos of people in tracksuits. We can send tracksuits to our customers or our partners. And so, we've always had a healthy dose of like creativity and brand marketing. We spend a lot of time on LinkedIn.
I love the posts you guys do, like the Barbie stuff that you guys pushed out. Fantastic.
Yeah, like that. Like I guess using our data to show up as educated and informative, but also fun and on brand for us. And so that Barbie thing was awesome because we were able to track the brand of Barbie before the movie and see how much it had suffered over the years compared to, say, Lego or someone like that. Barbie was not as inclusive. It didn't make people feel very good because of how they'd shown up historically. And then the movie did a great job of turning that around. And so we were able to kind of showcase the change in brand throughout that time period.
Excellent. Hey, so there was a post recently from... who was it? It was Icehouse, I think, that shows... Jono is going to put it here in my hands. I always do this to make it hard for him. Which shows the differences. I think was it Robbie Paul said there was like Halter, Sharesies, Henry, Mint Innovation, and Dawn Aerospace. And so it shows the difference between capital raise and revenue. And there was a big standout in the green column, as you'll see there, which is Tracksuit. And so I want to ask you what learnings from getting the journey so far can you give back to this audience to show how they could potentially do the same thing?
I mean, I think just to be clear, a lot of the companies in that post now have way more green than us. It's sort of something very specific about our business model that allows us to commercialize really quickly. It's a relatively simple product in the grand scheme of things. We do surveys. We could hack that for ages and just run surveys ourselves before building a massive tech product around it. So so we tested and learned and launched those surveys in a pretty manual way for a long time. Instead of someone amazing like Halter, who's had to build a ton of real product and get that around
hardware,
cow necks and then test and learn. We could just fire surveys off by email and see what was happening. So we could commercialize quickly, and that was...
But you also said that you wanted to bootstrap for a long time, right?
Totally.
So you were thinking early about getting revenue in, and you had to have been in the mind frame to bring revenue in from day one. Yeah,
and I think that's probably why this opportunity appealed. I would never have been the founder to go launch something like Halter. Probably not smart enough, but also just it's a lot of work before you commercialize. And I think I had maybe some scar tissue from seeing a lot of companies over the last 5-10 years who raised a bunch of money. I call it VC validation. You can make a nice slide pack, and if you have enough conversations and you get better at having that conversation and pitching that slide pack, someone will eventually give you money to go build that thing. But if that's not validated by customers, you have no idea whether it's the right thing to build. And so Matt and I, we talked about that a lot, and we talked okay, if we fund this thing, it initially has to be funded by customers. And that's the only way to prove product market fit. And then if we're getting pulled into new geographies or new products, then we can raise money. And that's what we did. So we were sort of had proved product market fit in New Zealand. We had a good 100 customers. We had maybe 50 in Australia. We were like, wow, this thing's going. And we were starting to get pulled by customers into the US and UK. And I think we had 12 or 14 team members and 3.5 million ARR or something. We were like, oh my God, this is too hard. So then we were like, okay, either we have to slow down and maybe not sell to those people who want it in the US and UK, or we raise some money and sort of hire ahead of the curve. And so, yeah, it was a focus on, we still have this focus, like even in our product team when we're launching new products or upsells, it's like commercialize it first, see who will buy it. And if people buy it, then we'll build it. And so it's a bootstrap mindset. We launched during COVID when VCs were already starting to kind of shake in their boots and not wanting to invest in things. So like it probably, like, even though we weren't looking for funding, it was probably looking at the market and being like, that's not really an option.
Was marketing easier in COVID or not? Like, I felt like a lot of brands were trying to get out there and, sell online.
I mean, there was e-commerce boomed, right? So yeah, I think that was a big part of spend for marketers during COVID.
Are marketers easier or harder to sell to?
I don't know. I mean, I think if you have a thing they understand, like, our like go-to-market pitch is actually fairly simple. It's like, what brand tracking is. We do it 10 times cheaper.
Yeah.
And 10 times better. So do you want a demo?
Yeah.
And because it's a thing they already know. We're not saying, hey, here's this brand new thing that we have to explain to you. It's like, no, here's brand tracking.
Yeah, with the dashboard.
Do you want it?
Yeah. So keen to get into the capital raise, right? It's been big news on LinkedIn everywhere recently.
Yeah.
Your series Slay, that was fucking great, by the way, whoever did that.
Emmy in Australia in our team, she is awesome.
Yeah, I was like, I'm commenting on that. That's so good. So 22 mil it was?
Yeah. NZD.
Yeah. Largely to American VCs. So keen to understand the process there. Seemed like you had a bad run of luck too, as that was all happening. You were sick and
appendix burst. Don't recommend it. Don't do it. So that was a bit of a surprise, but that was sort of mostly wrapped up by then. It was almost like immediately following that I had some bad luck.
It's like when you finally get to go on holiday, right? Your body just starts shutting down because it's like, I know that I can take some time off now.
The adrenaline poured out of my body and then I laid in bed for 3 weeks.
That sounds fun.
But yeah, like the Series A, I mean, I don't think we ever truly stopped like having conversations with VCs after our seed. So our seed was in January 2023. And Blackbird led that, and Icehouse participated, and some other strategic players. And then we talked to a bunch of US funds at that point, but we didn't have any US revenue. So it was more of like hey, let us know when you're here. And so we kept those conversations going, and really we never want to be in the position where we have to raise money. We just want to choose partners who will like lift our game and add a ton of value at the right point. And so we kept conversations going. I think I chatted to over 100 US VCs between September and November last year.
Is that all online, I hope?
I was in New York. So I took my family to New York for 3 months. For capital raise, but also to launch our office over there and hire a few people.
So how many of those in person? Like that's
I don't know, maybe 30 to 40 of them in person. And flying San Fran and back, but largely based in New York. And so those conversations were all happening during that time, and really just like managed to align with Altos and Footwork, who, I think, first of all, they're just super kind, like excited to spend.
I've seen you say this sort of like kindness, and I've actually written it down here. Like you say, you're looking for kindness in a VC. I know a lot of VCs. Kindness wouldn't be the first word that I think of. Yeah. So like, how do you define that? Like, and why are you looking for kindness in a VC? What does that mean to you?
I think they're wanting to build the same kind of business we are. We don't want to build a ruthless execution engine. Like we want to put our people first. We want to think long term. That's part of brand, is like, you know, what kind of business are we building? And Matt and I, when we set out, we wanted to change the world through the business that we were building, and we wanted to do that by building amazing products. But we also wanted to build an amazing company and like community, and have people buy into that journey, because we treated them really well. So, so we wanted a VC that didn't just say that, but acted like that too. And so, Altos and Footwork, and they both like do the work. I think one thing that stands out about people that join the Tracksuit team is it's probably less talk, more action. Like we just do stuff, we execute, we move, and that's part of that commercialization, is like you just test it, run with it, go, move. And so we're good at that, and they were too. Like they just immediately started adding value even before they invested. You know, I think Altos brought in 10% of our US revenue last year. Like they introed us to 10% of our US revenue. You know, it's like awesome. Like thank you.
That's very kind.
Yeah, very kind and very useful. And they show up with their hearts on their sleeves. We've had amazing conversations with them so far. Have our first like real board meeting tomorrow. So excited about that.
Are you a fox or a hedgehog?
What does that mean?
So I was deep on their website last night, Altos.
Oh yeah.
And I read this really interesting blog.
I should remember that.
Yeah, and I was like, I really loved it. And so the fox analogy is that always pitching to VCs, flamboyant startup founder, you know, like out there networking, life of the party. And hedgehog is like the committed to the cause, you know, like is really trying to solve a problem, slow and steady, doing it for the right reasons, like thing. And so that less flamboyant, investable, but they mention that that's the type of founder that they're looking for in a hedgehog. And I was like, interesting. Like I hadn't heard that before, but I quite liked it. And
I guess that they must think I'm a hedgehog.
A nice, kind hedgehog. Yeah.
Happy to be a hedgehog.
Yeah.
I'd say that's right. Like we're not really in it for the press or the
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, the Kool-Aid. We love building. And so we tend to put our heads down, build, do a bunch of work, and then sort of pop our heads up and be like, wow, where are we at? Oh, cool.
Yeah. I think that was evident by when you were everywhere on LinkedIn, the team was really enjoying it. You know, like, and it was I could see your team's energy across the social platforms, and it was authentic energy that you can read. You know how you can see, sometimes you can see please everyone repost this in Slack, you know, and put some good comments on. And then you can see like authentic, organic, you know, like people are enjoying this and having their moment. And so like kudos. It's that for me is, if you're going to describe culture, that's like one of the things you look for, is that people just feel engaged and don't need to be told to put some good words on the internets. Yeah,
I think one of the things I'm most proud of so far is that when we hire people, usually I would say more often than not, some sort of comment in the first few weeks comes out that's like, hey, it is what it looks like. And you know, because I think we show up in the world and it looks really great and it looks like a fun place to work, and that we treat our people really well, and that it's, you know, inclusive and open and safe, and that's important, that we showcase that, but that it's even more important that that's actually true. And so I'm always, it makes very heartwarming when new people join and they say like, it is what it says on the tin.
Awesome, mate. So after going through this series Slay, what would you say would be the biggest learnings that you could pass down to the next person who's starting to think about this capital raise?
Just create momentum. People invest in momentum, and you could have momentum with revenue. That's great. But you could also have momentum with like number of conversations you've had, or number of interested parties, or like a list of people who are willing to sign up for your product when you launch, or you know, you could even there's an unlimited number of ways you can create momentum, and just start a newsletter that creates momentum, and put people on it and get them to read it and enjoy it, and then when you find that you're ready to raise money, They will believe in the momentum that you've created, and you'll believe it yourself. It'll help you. And
when did you believe it? When was the moment for you that you were like, oh shit, we're onto something?
One of those first 11 that signed up was a good friend who I knew would be quite honest with me. Super experienced marketer as well, so the right kind of ICP, ideal customer profile. But yeah, it wasn't just like a connection that I had a warm intro to. It was like a good uni friend who would have told me to piss off if
it was shit.
Yeah,
I'll say it's shit.
Yeah. And we were sitting at lunch, and he sort of like, he said something like, oh mate, if that's what you're doing and that's the price, I would try and lock that in for 3 years.
Wow.
And I was like, that's pretty interesting. And I think at that moment I was like, okay, all of these other conversations are probably true. I haven't just kind of swindled them into thinking that it's a good idea. Like,
did you get nervous though? Because if I spoke to a friend about that, the first thing I would do is go and find 8 people that hate me and say, I need you to answer a question, because I don't know if I can trust that now.
Yeah, well, I mean, of that 100, most of them weren't friends. And I think the first point of validation is whether they even take the conversation. Yeah. So you've been warm introed, you say, hey, we're thinking about building something in this space. Are you willing to chat? And a bunch of them said yes. And so you're like, oh, cool. They're even interested in a chat. That's interesting. And then when they start actually signing up, that's the next stage of validation. So a lot of them were, I wouldn't say they didn't like me, but they just had no reference point on me, and I was completely fresh to them.
Yeah. That's a good moment.
Yeah. So that was just
mate.
Like, okay, I guess it made me feel more confident that all the other things were real.
You can go in on it, right?
Yeah.
When was the most scary moment?
I think this year, coming into this year with the Series Slay closing.
What was the person's name?
Emmy.
Emmy. Yeah. Well done, Emmy.
Yeah. Well done.
I'm gonna title this episode "Series Slay" by Emmy.
Yeah. Perfect. I think we ran pretty hard into the end of last year, and we felt like we'd achieved something really big and really meaningful. And then we all showed up in January, and I guess it was like an even bigger job.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, wow. Yeah. And now you have a whole year in front of you. And I think at that point, we'd grown from 20 to 65 in the last 11 months. We had offices in 4 countries all of a sudden. And all of our operational principles were good when we were 20 people, and everything was sort of broken. And I think, we were like, okay, let's roll out all this new stuff. And then there were too many meetings all of a sudden in it. So the start of this year has been really interesting because, there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
And we'd kind of broken all our systems in the lead up to Christmas in how to make things work. So
and you said before you're 0 to 1, right? So how do you reinvent yourself now to be from 1 to 10,000, right?
Good coaches, good therapy, hiring people that are way smarter and better than me at most things.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about giving away your Legos at Tracksuit, which is a great article by First Round Review. And essentially, if you're at a company that's growing as fast as we are, you have to look at what's on your plate at any given time and have it.
Yeah.
Or more. Hire someone to do your entire job, and then you go do other new things. And so Matt and we just changed our roles completely. We're co-CEOs, co-founders. Historically, he kind of looked after sales, marketing, growth, and I looked after customer, product, and ops. He's just relocated to the UK to kind of be the startup, we're down here doing scale up.
Yep.
And so we're kind of making the rules, and he's breaking the rules and
so
doing
what's his title now?
He's still co-CEO.
But just different.
Different role.
Yeah.
Just we're changing how he needs to have the
leash, the longer leash, right?
Totally. And also being a CEO allows him to break those rules and lean in a way that, we wouldn't be doing here. He can sign contracts that maybe we wouldn't sign here, change the pricing if he needs to. But just to make sure we have product market fit in the Northern Hemisphere.
And what, like with the co-CEO model is like always hot topic, right? It's the people that I've spoken to that have co-CEO or CEOs have said I couldn't do it without them, and I don't know how people do it on their own. And the people that do it on their own, like I don't know how they do it with people, right?
Yeah.
And so, talk me through how it's been for you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely sit in that camp of I don't know what it would be like without Matt. I can't imagine it. We worked together beforehand, so we know each other pretty well. I wouldn't say that I would recommend co-CEOing for people that like are just being thrown together. And I think we have very like low egos around what we do, and the roles changing, like because they do change a lot, and making sure that we talk very frequently and give each other good, robust feedback and make sure that we're not harboring anything, because it's just like you got to have it all out all the time, and that's but it's been phenomenal. Like it also means that I had my second daughter in February 2023. We just closed our seed, and I was like, peace. I took a whole month off. Like you can't do that as a startup CEO after raising 100%. A seed.
I equate it to having like a shared fuel tank. So Dan and I. I could call Dan and say, hey, I'm having a nervous breakdown tonight and I'm going to be fucked for the next 3 weeks and I need to just go to ground because it's too much or whatever it is. And he'll just say, I got it, and I don't have to worry about it as of that moment. Like I can go off and do what I do. Or hey, this is out of my wheelhouse, who's better fit for this type of work, this piece of work or this project or whatever it is. And because you're operating at that equal, like they're your equal, they're your partner, they're your person, there's no ego involved in it. And so I'm a fan of it personally.
And I think in New Zealand we're seeing quite a few examples, and even like there's even an advantage to not wasting a very valuable C-suite title. Like I think quite often if you have two generalist founders, one might end up being CPO or COO, and the other one's CEO. And actually, they're probably interacting a bit more like co-CEOs because they're founders. And that CPO or that COO, like, they're not a good COO. And they're not a good CPO.
It pisses off all the product people or all the operations people, right?
And you can't hire a really good CPO. You can't hire a good COO. So I think, it's been nice to be able to bring people into those teams who have their eyes on the C-suite roles and are way better than us at those things, and we kind of stay in our lane as the generalists that we are.
And so now you've got the money in the bank, right? I imagine a lot of the money is for international hiring and growth and the likes. Talk me through like not necessarily the workforce plan, so to speak, but talk me through like how does it look like over the next 18 months now?
So I think the money will be split pretty 50-50 international growth and hiring and like product and customer value. Our go-to-market so far has been very focused on like being the beautiful, radically affordable version of brand tracking, which is a little limiting, like in that we just are like the cute version of brand tracking. And it's been great for go-to-market, but I think this year we have an opportunity to just be the best brand tracker in the world. So sort of switching the way that we talk about that, and that will require some good product builds, which are all coming and is super exciting. So
bigger enterprise-y customer you're taking on, or
I don't think we don't have to go after that market necessarily. Like we are seeing more and more of those customers come to us because they've heard about us, and it's probably a 2-year sales cycle for them anyway, and we've only been around for 2 years. I think we don't necessarily want to go compete in big RFPs for huge enterprise contracts yet, but we can be the best brand tracker for that mid-market where we're really strong. And I guess being the best brand tracker in the world, and we're servicing that mid-market really well, and that will naturally, people will hear about that and will expand into other segments.
Awesome. You spoke about psychology before. I'm a massive advocate of everyone should be
go and see a psychologist, get your head checked all the time.
Yeah.
I do it often. And so I'm fascinated on that subject. And so the psychology of New Zealand success, we're in a fishbowl here of 5 million people. And so if you have some success here, there's a lot of social pressure on you straight away. If you have some success in a SaaS startup that's over the last couple of years has been really fucking hard times, do you feel that social pressure of these companies that are doing well? Or is that do you just feel hey, we're on our mission, we don't think about it?
I think we're starting to get more attention now. Capital raising is the thing that gets everyone's attention. If we were a 10 mil ARR bootstrap startup, no one would know about us still. Every time we raise capital, it seems like everyone's like, oh my God, that's huge. Around the fundraising, we definitely get a lot of attention. But in between, maybe it's the hedgehog vibe, but we sort of almost go to ground and just work, and it doesn't seem too intense.
Yeah.
And also, I think there's a good dose of humble pie when you go to the States, and a 13 million round in the States is nothing. It's just every day there's 100,000 of those. So, so you just kind of get put back in your box a little bit when you go over there.
Yeah. Do you think more I've had a few chats on the podcast recently about people saying on the pod, we should go to America faster. We should go and validate there quicker. You took the approach of validating over here and then going to the US. So what would be your feedback or thinking on that?
I think New Zealand's a really good beta market. You can prove product market fit pretty well here. It's always going to be a little bit different in the States for sure. Mm-hmm. We did the New Zealand, Aussie, US, UK kind of path. I'd say for every product, it's probably a little bit different. If you're a construction product, you probably need to go to the US or Singapore, bigger markets faster. But we had a good amount of test customers that we could find here that allowed us to iterate and continue changing and building. So hard to give a really good answer to that. But I do think New Zealand's a good test market. Mm-hmm. You can build something here that helps you prove product market fit. I think Aussie is an underrated market. I think it's a big market. There's real money there. And you look at a startup like Deputy, who basically became a unicorn just through Aussie. And they've launched other markets now, but they did really well just by focusing on the Aussie market. So you can build a significant business through Australia, and I think we tend to skip it. We go straight to the US. For us, that strategy, we got pulled into Aussie by brands who'd heard of us, and it just made sense. And then I think we were grateful for that, because now it's given us almost more confidence, more of a war chest to go after the bigger markets. But everyone's journey is they can sort of decide what's best for them.
What would be, if you were looking back on your journey and you were like, all right, if I had the opportunity to do that again, I might do it a little bit differently. What's the one thing that would be?
I think being even more, I'd say we hired slow at the start. And that was great because we managed to bring on fantastic people, but we probably stressed ourselves out a little bit too much. And we couldn't
find the perfect person.
No, just I think we did find the perfect people, but they were probably ready to go even before we hired them. We could have hired them 3 months earlier and stressed less, and maybe even raised a little bit sooner. I think we probably just waited a little bit too long. There was not really a slump, but just 12 people doing too much work. So I think if you have that product market fit and all the signs are going well, we probably were just a little bit stubborn and thought that we could bootstrap for longer than we needed to.
So now, how many people are getting? Is it Auckland, just Auckland, or are you spread out?
We've got 40 something in Auckland, I think 43, 16 in Sydney, 3 in New York, and 4 in New York now, and 3 in the UK.
Yeah, and in office culture, hybrid culture.
Yeah, in office. I mean, it's in office with full flexibility, but
that's my preferred. And I just fuck, I miss going into offices, right? And I miss the vibe of going in and like, I used to have, my keyring used to have like 50 keys on it with like all my startup clients' keys that I'd be able to go in and see them, and like I miss seeing teams vibe out in offices. Yeah. And so remote's great. I'm not an old angry man yelling at the cloud, you know, but maybe a little bit. Definitely old.
I think Matt and I are both social butterflies. Like we enjoy the office culture. That plays a role in it, because I think one of the things that's funny about culture is like the early team, just who you are sets the culture, and you need to be honest about that when you're early. And so we recognized that in ourselves, that we were going to want to be an in-office company. And I think one of the things that we try to do at Tracksuits is we try to like have an opinion. Being a brand means that you sort of have an opinion. You stand for something. Some people aren't going to like that. Some people are going to like that. And so because we believe in brand building and we kind of understand how to do it, we try to have an opinion. And we kind of thought, right, the full hybrid is like not having an opinion. Some people are in, some people aren't. You kind of do whatever you want. The full remote could be awesome. You could like first principles lean into that, pay people more, set up an awesome home office, like do all sorts of cool stuff. I'm sure there's a way to do that well. Because we're social and we wanted it office, we chose to be more of an in-office culture. But yeah, it's fun. It's a fun vibe in the office. It means you can kind of lean into having a cool office as well in all your centers. And so
where are you guys in Manhattan?
We're in like Soho area, but in like a shared space. Looking for a cool always office.
I like Soho. I was just in the US. I was in Manhattan over Christmas with my kids.
White Christmas?
No, I didn't get a white Christmas. It was actually the warmest Christmas in history, like for the last 25 years or something. I was walking around in a t-shirt and jeans in December.
Oh my god!
Yeah, and January. It was getting cold when we were leaving, like in 9th or something like that. But it was pretty crazy there for a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah, but fun and amazing and expensive to take two kids that are teenagers now, right? That are like, oh, I want those 18 pairs of Jordans, and I want this and I want that, and I'm like, yeah. So
help.
Yeah, I definitely. I normally take a suitcase to the US to like shop for all the kids, and then fill that suitcase up and bring it back. It was a backpack that I filled up when I was in New York. But man, I loved being in New York, and I loved the creative, like melting pot of every single person in the world comes together just to do hard, gnarly shit and wants to be the best that they can be, and that's the reason why they come there to change their lives and do something epic and cool, and it just creates amazing energy. It really does.
Yeah, everyone brings their A game in New York. It's like whether you're an artist or a startup person or a banker or whatever.
Yeah. Is it still the brand mecca of the world, New York?
It's definitely like the agency mecca of the world, which then kind of flows into the brand world. I think that's why we wanted to sit up there. Is it's more than anywhere else in the US. It feels like the brand mecca. So I would say yes, in my opinion.
Awesome, man. Hey, so I'll wrap up with a couple of questions, like before we let you get back to spend that series sleigh.
Go back to being my hedgehog, my natural hedgehog.
Yeah. I won't make any connotations about prickliness or anything, mate. I promise you. You've been lovely. I would kind almost.
Oh.
Yeah. Hey, so firstly, then this season, Series 4, we're asking a completely new question as a final question that I haven't given you any time to prepare for.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that question is to, the question is come from the previous person. So you're going to ask the question, you're going to give a question to the next person on the podcast. Okay. So you're going to give me a question there that you think would be great for the next person. Okay. And so the question then it's come from John and I, because you're going to be episode 1, is
I often talk about chapters in life. Like it's a big thing for me, and I believe that sometimes you need to close a chapter, sometimes you need to move on, sometimes you need to have a crack at something and take a chapter, right? And so I'm like, I always talk about this with people, and I'm always like, as a recruiter, they'll come to me and they'll be like down on themselves because something hasn't worked out, or they're elated because something, and I'm like, don't worry, just close that chapter and move on. You know, like there's plenty more in the story of you, right? And so I constantly talk about this. And so if I was talking about you, if you were thinking about your life, what would you want your biography to be called if I was going to read it in like 20 years?
Oh, that's tough.
The Kind Hedgehog.
The Kind Hedgehog. I mean, that would do. I'd like that more than most titles.
That feels like a kid's book that you can colour in, though.
Yeah. That might be what my biography is.
Yeah.
This is not something I've ever thought about. I probably don't know if I'm the type to write a biography.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be an autobiography, hopefully.
Right, yeah, okay. That would be even worse.
It's kind of like the same thing that you'd think of, like, what would you hope people would write on your tombstone? You know, like, what would you hope would be your legacy, you know, after?
I think the thing that I'm striving for right now, where I was hoping your question was going, was about chapters.
Yeah.
And
what's the next chapter?
well, what I'm striving for, and maybe the legacy that I'd like to leave, is, you know, not solely focused on business. And I'm a dad of a 1-year-old and 3-year-old daughters, husband to Catherine, and like that's so important to me that I do that well. And I'm passionate about Tracksuit and extremely competitive about winning and showing up in a good way and building something super meaningful. But that balance is like something that I'm really focused on doing well.
Yeah, that's hard, man. Like
I know.
as a guy that founds a company, 2 kids, you know, ex-wife.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the title would be, but I would love if that biography was able to describe a person that had found that balance and did a good job across all those things.
Maybe it is a kid's book, mate. Maybe it is. And after hearing you answer that question now, I think maybe it is. Maybe it is.
Hope so.
Yeah,
That'd be
well,
cool.
Yeah, maybe someone's out there drawing it for us right now.
Yeah, hopefully Oliver Jeffers, his books. Awesome.
Hey, so then that leads us to the question that you want to ask to the next person. So normally I don't give people the opportunity to know who's going to be on next. I just say, look, what's one question that you would love to ask of someone? And so what do you think that would be?
One thing that I reckon comes up in my brain, like if you're an entrepreneurial minded person, you see opportunities all the time, but when you're like doing one, you just like stick with that. But maybe asking another entrepreneurial minded person, what's the best idea that you're not doing right now?
How many have you got?
Probably 3 or 4.
Because that's so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have you answer that question, right?
Okay. Well, this is a super lame one, but I just think a lot of my ideas are less on like the big, massive VC funded thing and more in like the side growth hacky thing. And people are going to laugh. But I reckon that someone should create like content like TikTok, Instagram, like pull that all into just a boring email for busy millennials.
Yeah.
Because like I love TikTok, but I am not willing to go lose like 4 hours to find 4 funny videos. I would love it if I would pay like $1 a week
have a
to
newsletter
have
sent
the
to you
best
with the best
TikTok
TikToks?
and Instagram content and memes in it, because I sort of just live in email and I can't afford to be in those other things. And also like my phone addiction is out of control. Like I'm trying to do everything I can as part of that balance to get rid of my phone. But I would love it if I had like 10. So if somebody launched a newsletter with good social media content that I could just click the links to and then be like, great, I'm up to date with all the latest memes. I have seen the funny content, back to my normal life. That would help me a lot. And I would pay money for that. And I reckon a bunch of lazy/busy millennials would do the same.
I would do the same.
Yeah.
I would do the same. Because I don't even look at TikTok anymore, but a lot of people talk to me about, did you see that? I'm like, no, I didn't, but it sounds good.
And $1 per week from 100,000 people goes a long way.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah.
Shit, yeah.
So somebody should do that.
Someone's going to build it right now. Someone's going to do something about it.
Please let me know. I will be your first customer.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll be the second. And we'll even get you back on the podcast to talk about how you built it. Hey, thanks so much, Conor. It was like an absolute treat. I know you're busy. I know things are going a bit wild for you at the moment. And so thanks for taking the time out to share space, sit down, tell your story, and pass that information down to the next person.
Oh, man, it's an honor. Thanks for having me.
See you, man.
Cheers.
Well, that's episode 1 of season 4. I can't believe we've got to season 4 already. When we first thought about doing this podcast, I literally had to drag people off the street. Some of you that have been with us on this journey may have heard it before in the past. I was like a recruiter trying to do a podcast in the startup industry. What didn't go down so well, a lot of people didn't want to come on. We literally had to drag people off the street in the first series to now blow up to be a podcast that is getting so many of you like subscribe to us, so many of you follow us on Spotify. So many people commenting and sharing around with people. Every time I'm in the street, I meet people and I like chat with people and they tell me that they love the podcast or they're watching the podcast or they give me ideas on guests. And so thank you so much to everyone. Thank you so much to Conor. Like he's just given up some valuable time to come in, get his message out there, to give you information. Like, as I said before, like really lovely, humble guy. And so I really appreciated sitting down and having a chat with him. I'm looking forward to watching what happens with Tracksuit with this money. I think they're going to do the right things and grow. And well, if they're doing anything like they've done in the past already, I think they're onto something really special here. And so I can't wait to see the next version of them. And I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Until then.
This podcast is produced by John O'Tucker from Empire Films.